Ito yun. Session resume. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we take up the additional reference of business, and may I request the Secretary General to read the titles of the bills and resolutions on first reading, as well as our communications and committee reports.
The Secretary General is directed to read the title of the measures on first reading as well as communications and resolutions.
Additional reference of business, bills on first reading. House Bill Number 8651, establishing the Basak Senior High School in Barangay Basak, Maasin City, Southern Leyte, by Representative Mercado.
To the Committee on Basic Education and Culture.
House Bill Number 8652, exempting LGUs and the private sector acquiring and purchasing COVID-19 vaccines from import duties, taxes, and other fees, by Representative Lopez.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
Resolutions. House Resolution 1562, directing the Committee on Higher and Technical Education to inquire on the implementation of the National Service Training Program Act of 2001, by Representative Romualdo.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 1563, directing the Committee on Public Accounts to inquire on the current financial state of the SSS in the connection with the implementation of the increase in member contribution rate as required by law, represented by Representative Singson.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 1564, directing the Committee on Public Accounts to inquire on the current financial state of the GSIS in connection with the proposed increase in member premium contribution, by Representative Singson.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 1565, urging the House through the Committees on Human Rights and Agrarian Reform to investigate the brutal killing of farmer Romeo Romy Torres and the harassment and threats of displacement against farmers of Sitio Compra, San Mateo, Norzagaray, Bulacan, by Representatives Culyamat, Zarate, Gaite, Brosas, Castro Francen, Elago.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 1566, urging the DepEd and the Palarong Pambansa Board to institutionalize esports as one of the medal sports in the Palarong Pambansa, providing rules and mechanisms in the inclusion thereof, by Representative Teves Jose.
To the Committee on Youth and Sports Development.
Messages from the Senate. Message dated February 3, 2021, informing the House that on February 2, 2021, the Senate designated Senators Zubiri, Gatchalian, Villanueva, Marcos, and Ontiveros as conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill Number 1855 and House Bill Number 5925.
To the Committee on Rules.
Message dated February 4, 2021, informing the House that on February 3, 2021, the Senate approved the Conference Committee report of the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill Number 1357 and House Bill Number 4157.
To the Committee on Rules.
Message dated February 8, 2021, informing the House that the Senate on even date passed with amendments House Bill Number 6598.
To the Committee on Local Government.
Message dated February 8, 2021, informing the House that the Senate on even date passed Senate Bill Number 1886, in which it requests the concurrence of the House.
To the Committee on Justice.
Communications. Letters and email from certain city mayors, municipal mayors, and provincial governors submitting the reports on fund utilization and status of programs, projects, activities, implementation relative to Bayanihan grant to cities, municipalities, and provinces for certain months of 2020.
To the Committee on Appropriations.
Letter dated February 5, 2021 of Executive Secretary Salvador C. Medialdea, Office of the President, Malacanang, transmitting 2 copies of RA 11522, which was signed by President Duterte.
To the Archives.
Committee reports. Report number 738-2740 of the Committees on Transportation and Appropriations on House Bill numbers 8653, 5488, and 8654. Report numbers 741 to 744 of the Committees on Higher Education, Higher and Technical Education and Appropriations on House Bill numbers 8656 and 8659.
To the Committee on Rules.
Report number 745 of the Committee on Local Government on House Bill number 8664.
To the Committee on Rules. Session suspended.
Ticket.
Session resume. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the consideration and adoption of the following resolutions. Mr. Speaker, I move that we adopt House Resolution number 1539 as contained in Committee Report number 734. May I request the Secretary General to read the title of the resolution.
Secretary General is hereby directed to read the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 1539, Resolution commending and congratulating Dr. Emil Q. Javier, PhD, for having been conferred by President Rodrigo R. Duterte the rank and title of Filipino National Scientist for his distinguished achievements in science and technology.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we adopt House Resolution number 1539.
Are there any objections? Hearing none, the same is adopted.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we adopt House Resolution number 1538 and may request the Secretary General to read the title of the resolution.
The Secretary General is directed to do so.
House Resolution 1538, a resolution congratulating and commending the Bureau of Internal Revenue under the leadership of Commissioner Cesar R. Dulay and the entire economic team of His Excellency President Rodrigo Duterte for achieving an all-time high of 15.4% over its tax collection target for the fiscal year 2020, thereby providing the much-needed fiscal boost at these crucial times when the Philippines strives to recover from the economic devastation caused by the COVID-19 global pandemic.
Madam Speaker, I move that we adopt House Resolution number 1538.
Hearing no objections, said House bill is hereby adopted.
Madam Speaker, I move that we also adopt House Resolution number 1544. May I request the Secretary General to read the title of the resolution.
The Secretary General is directed to do so.
House Resolution 1544, resolution expressing the profound condolences of the House of Representatives to the family of Honorable John H. Osmeña, former Senator and former Representative of the 2nd Legislative District of Cebu during the 17th Congress and the 3rd Legislative District of Cebu during the 10th Congress.
Madam Speaker, I move that we adopt House Resolution number 1544.
Any objections? Hearing none, then Resolution 1544 is adopted.
Madam Speaker, I move that we also adopt House Resolution number 1560. May I request the Secretary General to read the title of the resolution.
Secretary General is directed to do so.
House Resolution 1560, resolution expressing the profound condolences of the House to the family of the Honorable Victor San Andres Ziga, former Senator during the 8th Congress and Assemblyman of the Province of Albay from 1984 to 1986.
Madam Speaker, I move that we adopt House Resolution number 1560 for adoption in consideration with House Resolution number 1551.
Any objection? Hearing none, then House Resolution 1560 is hereby adopted.
Madam Speaker, I move to correct the earlier resolution to adopt House Resolution number 1544. May I move again for the adoption of House Resolution number 1544 for adoption in consolidation with House Resolution number 1550.
Any objection? Hearing none, then 1544 in consolidation with HR 1550 is hereby adopted.
Madam Speaker, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 7814 as contained in Committee Report number 5550. May I request the Secretary General to read the title of the bill.
Secretary General is directed to read the title of the bill.
House Bill number 7814, an act strengthening drug prevention and control, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 9165 as amended, otherwise known as the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002.
Madam Speaker,
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, the parliamentary status of the bill is that it is in the period of sponsorship and debate. I move that we open the period of sponsorship and debate.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, and the period of debate is now open.
Madam Speaker, I move that we open the period of interpellation.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, then the period of interpellation is now open.
Madam Speaker, I move that we recognize the sponsor of the bill, the Honorable Barbers.
The Honorable Robert Ace Barbers is hereby recognized.
Madam Speaker, I move that we also recognize the Honorable Christopher Belmonte of Quezon City for his interpellation of the bill.
Honorable Kit Belmonte is hereby recognized to interpolate the sponsor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. However, Madam Chair, this representation notices the presence of Deputy Speaker Arnie Teves on the floor. And I understand that he did mention yesterday his interest in likewise interpolating the sponsor. If in deference to his more knowledge on the subject matter, I am willing to defer my interpretation and yield to the Deputy Speaker, Madam Chair. At nakinig si Arnie.
Is there any objection?
Mr. Speaker, we withdraw the earlier motion to recognize the Honorable Christopher Belmonte for the interpellation. Instead, we move to recognize the Deputy Speaker Arnie Teves for his interpellation. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Deputy Speaker Arnie Teves is hereby recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry, hinihingal pa ako. Tumakbo ko galing sa taas. Good afternoon. Meron lang akong questions dun sa sa amendments ng bill. Dati pa pinag-usapan na namin to ni Chairman. My very utmost concern is the phrase regardless of purity. Ang problema ko kasi dito sa regardless of purity, pwedeng ma-adulterate yung ebidensya. Naiintindihan ko si Chairman na para maging madali sa ating mga tagapaghuli, it will be easier for the prosecution. But I hope Chairman will also consider, for example, there's 200 liters of a chemical na nahuli. 100% yung purity. Kung ninakaw yung kalahati nun, pinalitan ng extender, tubig man or whatever, 200 liters pa rin yun. Pero kalahati na lang yung purity. Anong mangyayari doon sa kalahati na ninakaw? Pwede na ulit ma-process yun para igawa ng droga. Again, inaamin ko, dati akong addict, kaya alam na alam ko to lahat eh. That's one of my concerns, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, distinguished colleague. Napakagandang tanong. No? In fact, isa sa mga naging mainit na subject matter when we were deliberating on these proposed amendments in the Republic Act 9165 ay yung issue tungkol dun sa purity. And the committee, for purposes of abbreviating the debate and the discussion on the issue of purity, we decided that we maintain the phrase regardless of purity as stated in the old law dun sa 9165. Isang perfect example na pwede nating sigurong gamitin ay kapag halimbawa ang isang tao, ang isang drug dependent ay nahuli in his possession shabu, and it was tested to be, say, 1% purity, it is still shabu. Therefore, there is still an unlawful act of possessing shabu, which is still punishable under our laws. So, kaya naging ganun ang interpretation doon so that hindi maging basihan para i-dismiss sa korte yung sinasabing purity. Kasi baka magkaroon pa ng elbow room o hindi kaya point of discussion kapag pineg natin yung purity ng illegal substance as an evidence against the accused. Yun ang aking reply sa katanungan, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague.
Mr. Speaker, if I may continue, additional concern. Pwede kasi gamitin pangtira ng isang tao yung regardless of purity. Pinakamagandang example dyan, simple lang eh. Merong isang drum na tubig sa bahay mo. Pure na tubig. Yung bahay mo, hindi ganun kaganda yung bakod, kawayan lang, pwedeng mapasok ng kamay ng tao, hulugan niya yung isang drum ng tubig ng 5 gramo ng shabu. Sabay i-report ka ngayon. So pag testing nun, ang content nun ngayon is 5 grams of shabu in 200 liters of water. Then it becomes a solution. Anong bilang natin ngayon? 200 kilos of shabu or 5 grams of shabu? Dahil ang laking diferensya nun eh. Ikulong na yung tao nun. Maski hindi pa siya nagbenta, sa dami nun, para na siyang producer nun. Kung walang purity nga, ang purity nun is 2.5% lang. Because, tama ba ako? 2.5. Basta the purity is very small. Because it's 5 grams of shabu in 200 liters of water, which is equivalent to 200 kilos in weight. So, ang bilang nun, 200 kilo ng shabu, yung possession mo. Kawawang-kawawa ito. At ang daling gawin nun, believe me. I saw that with my own 2 eyes done long time ago when I was still using shabu. Long time ago. By the way, I've been 21 years clean. I don't even take alcohol. I hope you listen to an experienced individual. Hindi naman ako nagyayabang, nagsasabi lang ako ng totoo. At maging practical naman tayo. Ayoko lang na mangyari ito sa tao na walang sala. Ang dali-dali gawin. Ang daming tao na mga kababayan natin na nag-iimbak ng tubig dahil wala silang stable source ng tubig. Karamihan nun may kalaban pa. Kalaban lang sa politika, halimbawa, kapitan ng kalaban mo. Ang daling gaguhin eh. Mag-utos ka lang, sige, itsahan mo ng 5 gramong shabu yung timba niya. Sabay parade natin. Kawawa, di ba? Again, I'm not trying to force the issue. Gusto ko lang malaman ng taong bayan that these are possibilities. And habang ginagawa pa lang natin ang batas, habang nagdidebate pa lang tayo, sana magawa natin ng paraan. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Distinguished colleague, gaya ng sinabi ko kanina, hindi matatawaran yung experience ng ating kasama kapag ang usapin ay tungkol dito sa illegal na droga. In fact, he was a major contributor to most of the amendments being proposed in this measure in the last Congress and even up to this Congress. And I do appreciate the gentleman for proposing such. No? However, if I may, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, yung punto na kung saan ay maring manakaw at ma-dilute yung sinasabing ebidensya, the law is very clear na kapag ikaw ay nahuli ngayon, within the next 24 hours, ay ang ang ebidensyang makukuha sa iyo ay isi-certify ng isang laboratory, no, na kung saan ay sasabihin kung ano yung weight, ano yung purity ng evidence. While I do understand the apprehension of Congressman Teves doon sa pagpapababa ng purity na maaaring maging basis for maybe acquittal or maybe dismissal of a case against the accused. Ang ating pong ano dito ay na-certify na ho yan ng laboratory. So kung na-certify yan and there was already a certification issued about the weight, the quantity, and the purity of the substance, whatever happens after that, perhaps kung i-present yung ebidensyang yun again sa korte, we will just probably let the courts decide dyan sa puntong yan. Your Honor, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, lastly, Mr. Chairman, again, can I get a categorical answer? If you are caught with a diluted 200 liters of water containing 5 grams or even just 1 gram of shabu, how much shabu will be charged to you? 200 grams? 200 kilos or 5 grams?
Well, if upon apprehension, the PIDEA Crime Lab certifies that it was the evidence found in your possession is 200 grams, then it will be 200 grams.
No, because ganito nga 5 gramo lang yon tinapon sa isang drum ng tubig. 200 kilos yung isang drum ng tubig. So, paano ka matcha-charge nun? Halimbawa, naka-plastic yun. Natapon doon yung plastic, butas, tunaw na. When you test that water, it has very, very small trace of shabu. But again, ang totoong volume nun, 200 liters, which is equivalent to 200 kilos in weight. Anong kaso mo nun sa korte ng posesyon? 200 kilo ng shabu or 5 gramo ng shabu? Yun lang naman, Mr. Chairman. Para lang maklaro natin at para ngayon pa lang mapag-isipan na rin ng mga korte kung anong take nila doon later.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, na maaaring bumaba yung weight nung sinasabing ebidensya. But, of course, if yung sinasabing senaryo, Mr. Speaker, ng ating butihing congressman from Negros, ay during the time of the apprehension, habang hinuhuli siya ng pulis, ay itinapon niya sa tubig, whatever is found that is that could be deciphered as a shabu, yun lang nga po ang may charge sa kanya. Yun lang ang may charge sa kanya. Kasi, remember, the possession itself is already an unlawful act. Therefore, punishable under our laws.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, ganito kasi yan Ang shabu is very soluble. Pag tinapon mo yan sa tubig, automatic tunaw yan. 1,000% tunaw yan. Lalo na pag masyadong maraming tubig at ang konti ng shabu. Again, if I may repeat, 5 grams, tinapon mo sa isang drum, 200 kilos of shabu solution yun. Yun lang. I don't think we'll get into a resolution now. I just wanted to reiterate it. Again, I hope the senators also, dadaan naman to sa kanila din, sana mapag-isipan din nila at magawa natin ng magandang solusyon. I understand very much the intention of the chairman. Kaming dalawa magkasama nito gumawa eh. Ako yung vice chairman niya dati. So, kaya alam na alam ko to. Matagal ko na itong pinakiusap sa kanya. At sabi ko nga, chairman, sana naman hindi na dumating na tayo pang dalawa magtalo dito dahil nakakahiya. Dahil ikaw yung chairman ko, ako yung vice chairman mo, tayo yung gumawa nito. Sabay tayo pa magtatalo sa batas na ito. So again, magtulungan na lang tayo. I hope we get into a positive resolution to this really, really important concern. That's all, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, distinguished colleague. But let me just state that while I understand the apprehension of the gentleman from Negros, the intention of this proposed amendment is only to determine not the purity, but only the weight or the amount of the illegal substance found either in his possession or maybe discovered while there was an unlawful act being committed as stated in the Republic Act 9165. So, yes, we will consider the idea and the suggestion of the gentleman from Negros. When at the appropriate time, maybe he can help the committee to frame up perhaps a phrase or a paragraph that can be inserted into the amendments at the appropriate time, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, distinguished colleague from Negros.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, next to interpolate is the Honorable Christopher Belmonte.
The Honorable Christopher Belmonte is hereby recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon po. Will the honorable sponsor, the dashing Ace Barbers who comes from line law enforcement officers and expert in the matter,
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry I wasn't able to hear.
payag ka bang magpa-interpolate? Shortcut.
Gladly, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. First of all, let me state na I agree with the sponsor and the committee na kailangan nga po talagang ma-amend ang 9165. From a long-standing practical experience, law enforcement and legal practice on the ground, kailangan po talaga. And kailangan lang po nating linawin kasi pwedeng maganda ang epekto nito, pwede ring makasama po para sa ating lahat. So, just for my clearer understanding, Mr. Speaker, may the sponsor provide us with the objectives of the amendments, of this set of amendments to the law, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
Gladly, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, the reason why we introduced legal presumption in the fight against illegal drugs is because we'd like to run after not just the ordinary street peddlers of illegal drugs, but also run after drug lords or big-time drug syndicates, because it seems that there are cases where it was dismissed for simply lack of evidence or simply lack of weight as to the involvement of a certain person other than the street peddler. So kita ho natin na medyo marami tayong dapat gawin. The biggest question, Mr. Speaker, is paano ho natin makakasuhan, makukonvict o makukulong itong mga sinasabi nating drug lords. They are not the ones selling the drugs in the streets, nor you cannot see them negotiating for a sale or a trading of this illegal substance. So napakahirap po.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. So tama ho pa ang pagkaintindi ko. Ang gusto po natin dito ay palakasin yung capabilities ng law enforcement officers para mahabol po nila yung talagang mga drug lords, yung mga big time na nagtutulak ng droga. Hindi lamang po yung mga street level at saka lalong-lalo na ho para ma-prevent din yung paglaganap ng usage nitong illegal drugs.
That is correct, Mr.
That is,
Speaker, distinguished colleague.
If I understand it. And left unspoken is para hindi ho mag-resort sa shortcuts yung ating mga law enforcers or mag-resort to extrajudicial killings para lang ho manalo sa gera na to. Tama po ba yun, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor?
Tama yun, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague. In fact, para lang malinaw, ang objectives o yung key provisions nitong amendment na ito ay, if I may, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, one is it provides for a legal presumption on who is considered as importer, financier, protector, or cuddler of illegal drugs. Number two, to penalize negligent lessors of properties. Kasi there are instances where clandestine laboratories are discovered in condominium units or houses being rented out by syndicates. So dito sa batas na ito, dito sa ating amendments, we will already penalize negligent lessors of properties that were used as clandestine laboratories. Kasi dapat ho, meron silang role. In fact, in this proposal, we will compel them to comply with some documentary or repertorial requirements. No? Kagaya po yung kanilang pag-inspect sa kanilang mga properties or sa kanilang mga units. Third is to mandate the conduct of drug testing of Filipino professionals and non-professional athletes. Maraming cases where, meron tayong atleta na nakikilala na dahan-dahan and then eventually nasisira yung kanilang career because they are discovered to have been using illegal drugs. So ito, with this amendment, kinokompel na natin na bago ka pa mag-represent sa ating bansa bilang isang atleta, ay kailangan meron ka ng certification that you are drug-free at hindi ka gumagamit ng illegal na droga. Next is yung extend the criminal liability to the partner, president, director, manager, trustee, estate administrator, or officer of the corporation or partnership who consents to or tolerates the use of the property of the corporation or partnership as den, dive, or resort. Maraming cases ganito, no? Restaurants or resorts are being used as drug dens. And masyadong maluwag, no, sa interpretasyon natin na walang kinalaman yung may-ari. But there are cases where the owner allowed the use of his property as a drug den because perhaps for monetary consideration. So, ang mga major objectives nitong proposal na ito, Mr.
Thank
Speaker.
you for that, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. If the sponsor will allow me, pasukan po natin maya-maya yung presumptions at saka yung given yung objective na madali big time. For a matter of housekeeping lang po, for my comfort level, the comfort level of this representation, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. During the committee hearing na pinag-usapan po natin, again, itong amendments na to ng Dangerous Drugs Act, a number of sponsors initially stated their intent to withdraw from sponsorship of this bill dahil sa kinabahan ho sila na the provisions as stated were in effect reviving the death penalty, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. In fact, I do recall joining the sponsor, the committee chairman in this matter, in pleading to our colleagues and taking the position na ang pinag-uusapan po natin dito ay yung revision ng Dangerous Drugs Act and hindi po yung death penalty. And the chairman of the committee himself stated na hindi natin gustong pasukan ang death penalty dito. In fact, ang gusto po nating gawin ay iwanan po yung the matter na yon sa proper committee, which in this case would be the Committee on Justice. And we confine ourselves dito lang po sa usapan ng dangerous drugs. Is that not correct, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor?
Yes, that is correct. I remember, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, that the gentleman from Quezon City clearly emphasized that particular point and asked this representation whether are we trying to amend or repeal the death penalty law. Now, let me just state, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, that perhaps what caught the attention of the distinguished colleague from Quezon City and all other authors was the provision, the penal provision on Section 13 of RA 9165, which makes reference to Section 11, where the penalty for violation is maximum penalty of life imprisonment to death. So, ang pong nakasulat po doon ay nakalagay lamang po doon ay maximum penalty. We purposely, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, wrote the phrase life imprisonment to death so that in order to avoid yung vagueness of the penal provision. Kasi that is what the law says anyway. Ang nakalagay po doon ay maximum penalty. But if you spell out what maximum penalty would be, this is the life imprisonment to death. We never attempted to repeal the death penalty in this case, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. In fact, thank you for correcting, anticipating my question and correcting me. I was under the impression that this was Section 11 amending Section 13, which reads, as amended by our proposed law, any person found possessing any dangerous drug during a party or at a social gathering or meeting or in the proximate company of at least two persons shall suffer the penalty of life imprisonment to death and the fine of 500,000 pesos to 10 million pesos, regardless of the quantity and purity of such dangerous drugs. Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. And the purpose of putting this amendment in Section 13 is because the RA 9165, the original law, did not contemplate imposing the maximum penalty of death to a person found in possession of drugs under these circumstances. Is my understanding on the matter correct, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor? Otherwise, 9165 would have put that specific wordings as it did in other similar provisions imposing penalties by imposing the maximum penalty of death. In other provisions under the original 9165, which we intend to amend, specifically they stated that they wanted that the death penalty was an option. Is that not correct, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, you are correct in that interpretation because what the committee did, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, is only to spell out the penalty, the maximum penalty, and the amendment would read, delete the maximum penalty and instead spell out what the maximum penalty is in our present laws.
Correct, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. In other words, it is contemplating the possibility, if our laws would allow, laws and jurisprudence and the justice system would allow, contemplating the death penalty in the circumstance of a person found in possession of dangerous drugs in a gathering or of at least two persons, which wasn't contemplated by the original 9165. Is that not correct, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor?
No, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, that was not the intention. We did not touch on the penalty. If you notice, most of the amendments that are being proposed are only on the legal presumptions.
That is correct, except for this specific provision, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, which did touch on the penalty. May I add another point, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor? We were both members of the 17th Congress, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. And I do recall that after it passed on third reading, this particular bill was returned to the committee by the plenary itself, precisely because of this specific provision, which in essence was subject to the interpretation that we are allowing the death penalty or legislating anew the death penalty for this specific circumstance, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, tama po yung observation ni Congressman Belmonte. However, the original law already states in Section 11, sa possession of dangerous drugs, the penalty of life imprisonment to death. So this was already stated, explicitly stated in the Republic Act 9165. So ang ginawa lamang po natin ay we did the same to all other sections with a penal provision of life imprisonment to death. We just spelled it out, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague. So wala ho kaming repeal, wala ho tayong inimpose. In fact, during the last Congress, yes, I do remember that it was recalled for a while. But after discussions with the Committee on Rules, and after finding out that there was no intention to repeal the death penalty or even amend the penal provisions, it was approved on third and final reading during the last Congress, Mr. Speaker. So, dito ho, gaya ho ng sinabi ko kanina, ay wala ho tayong initiative or attempt or plano to change whatever was stated as the penalty for any violation of this 9165, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. The clarification is much valued. However, it is still a dangerous addition, specifically because as our law stand and jurisprudence stand, the law repealing the death penalty is still in effect, despite the intentions of many of our colleagues in the House to reimpose the death penalty. And I must say, with some justification and reasonableness on their part. However, the law, thus, as it exists now, says that no death penalty shall be imposed as the maximal penalty. Is that not correct, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor?
Yes, as it is, because there was a suspension of the imposition of the death penalty. Therefore, it still holds as what the law says. However, we cannot impose death on any violation as a penalty for anyone who violates any provision of this act, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. I'm sure the Speaker will know better on the subject matter than I do, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. But it is my understanding, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, that when two laws ang pinagbangga po natin, dalawang batas po ang pinagbangga po natin, the later law will prevail over the earlier law. Which means na dahil pareho, the intent of the legislature during an earlier period will be superseded by the intent of the legislature in a later later law as enacted. And suppose, presuming that we do pass this law as it is written, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, and this amendment in Section 11 correcting Section 13 being a later law will then allow the death penalty for the specific circumstance of persons found in possession of dangerous drugs with the said amount in the presence of two or more other persons. Wouldn't that be the proper interpretation of the law and jurisprudence as it stands, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor?
Yes, yes, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, you are correct. The later law will prevail. But again, as I stated earlier, there was no intention to repeal or amend the penal provision of Republic Act 9165. Now, if the good gentleman and the distinguished gentleman from Quezon City would be kind enough to perhaps rephrase whatever at the appropriate time, rephrase what we intend to spell out here in this proposal, then I guess the committee will not have any questions about
Thank
that.
you for that,
Because
Mr. Speaker,
if
Your
this-
Honor. I very much appreciate that, and at the proper time, I hope that the proper amendment may be introduced by this representation or the committee itself so as to clarify any vagueness.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
This representation appreciates very much the proposal at the appropriate time that will be forwarded by the distinguished gentleman from Quezon City in order to avoid vagueness again of the interpretation, because there was really no intention to change or amend the penal provision. We are just proposing legal presumptions in order to help, support, and aid our prosecutors in getting a conviction to those that are really in the business of illegal drugs. Not just the ordinary street peddlers, Mr. Speaker.
And I thank the honorable sponsor, the chairman of the committee on that, for that. He did state that specifically at the outset of the series of committee hearings to tackle this committee. I would just like to make sure na malinaw na hindi ho natin masisingit yung death penalty through this, kung hindi rin naman ito yung intention po natin. On a side note, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, I remember a case noong May 2016, Close Up Forever Summer Concert. Yung may limang biktima na namatay dahil sa overdose. At isa lang ang nahuli, yung suspected seller nung araw na yon. Pero due to follow-up operations sa galing ng law enforcement officers po natin, a week later or so, through the follow-up operations po nila, naka-aresto po ng 5 pa na additional suspected drug dealers. And I presume later on down the road, natuntun din nila yung drug lord behind the scene. My point here, Mr. Speaker, is ang objective ng batas nga natin ay para madali yung drug lord. Hindi po yung ordinaryong tulak at maproteksyonan yung mga biktima nila. Hindi ho, kaya pag ganito ka-vague yung batas natin at nandyan yung mga similar penalties na katulad mas madaling tumahimik na lang o hindi na lang gumalaw or hindi na mag-follow up yung mga police para magtuloy ng operation doon. Kasi may huli na sila eh. Maximum penalty na naman to eh. Diba? Anong incentive nito para kumanta? Anong incentive nito para maximum na siya eh. Anong areglo mo? Under our laws, the law enforcers, under our criminal code and criminal procedure, least guilty ang pwedeng maging state witness. Under these provisions, maximum na silang lahat. Wala nang, parang natanggalan natin ng bala ang ating law enforcers. Parang incentive na yung simpleng tulak o yung biktima ay kumanta. Kasi si biktima, si simpleng tulak, death penalty na rin sila anyway. Hindi na rin nakaka-avail ng mga areglo na pwedeng ibigay ng law enforcement officers para madali yung mga big shot. Hindi ho kaya may ganong epekto to, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor? At tanong ko lang po.
Yes, very tragic, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, yung nangyari doon sa na-overdose. No? In fact, she was clearly a victim, no, of the legal drugs. No? At dapat managot, hindi lamang yung street peddlers. And with the follow-up operation made by the enforcers, they were able to apprehend yung iba ring involved. Kasi hindi lang pala isa, dalawa yan. It appears to be a syndicate, no? Where the syndicate, apparently, no, ay meron ding information ibinigay kung saan yung source nung drugs na yon, no? I read some of the details of the case, and I remember na meron until now, no, they're still doing a follow-up operations because the same type of drug, yung party or cocktail drug that they call it, yung ecstasy, the same quality, the same look. Kasi ngayon ko lang nalaman, Mr. Speaker, na iba-iba pala itsura niyan. But the same look, which was apparently taken by the victim, was still proliferating in the same area. And this apparently came from the same syndicate. So hanggang ngayon, fina-follow up pa rin ho yan ng mga law enforcers sa PIDEA. So, kaya nga ho, gusto natin na kung sakaling mahuli itong mga ito, of course, they will definitely deny, no? As the normal, natural reaction nila, they will deny any involvement. Sabihin nila, hindi naman ako yung nag-abot, hindi naman ako yung nagbenta eh. But kung tinuro siya as the source, then we can use now the legal presumption and let him defend himself in court. Yun lang po ang ating objective dito, Mr.
I understand that, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, and I beg the indulgence of the honorable sponsor. Pag-usapan natin yung presumptions bandang dulo, and if the sponsor will allow me, kasi importanting topic to, lalo nang nag-a-allow tayo ng presumptions on presumptions to that on the later part of my interpolation. Pwede we both have more time to prepare on that subject matter. However, Mr. Speaker, my point is, as to the penalties and the bargaining, I'm thinking about it from my limited experience with our law enforcement. Ang pinakamadaling paraan para makuha nila kung sino yung bossing ay para kumanta yung nahuli nilang small fry. At para magawa nila yon, allowed sila ng batas, ng tools, para pwede nilang i-negotiate yung small fry. Point ko lang po dito, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, by imposing the maximum penalty dito, hindi ko sinasabing mali. Tanong ko lang po to. Hindi po ba tinatanggal natin yung option, yung availability para sa law enforcement officers natin na magamit yung small fry para makuha yung big fish, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Hindi po sa presumptions. Nandun pa lang po tayo sa paano niya papakantahin yan. Sort of reducing, using shortcuts, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. The tools, the legal tools provided by our laws and the rules of criminal procedure for our law enforcement officers is the law itself. Would not this imposition of the maximum penalty, likewise for small fry, limit? I'm just saying, Mr. Speaker, I'm not saying it is right or wrong. I'm just asking the question, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, for my better knowledge and clarification.
Well, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, meron po tayong provision dito sa ating proposed amendment on Section 33A, the immunity from prosecution. And this can be used as a bargaining chip or a tool, no, for the apprehended suspects to be able to bargain and, provided that he gives out valuable information. So, nandito ho yan, nakasama po yan sa ating proposal. Section 33.
Thank you for that, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Ang pinapoint out ko lang po, magbabangga, I don't disagree with that provision. In fact, I fully agree na that option should be available to our law enforcement officers. Ang sinasabi ko lang po, pagdating nito sa prosecution, sa korte, ang dahil sa banggaan nito and our existing criminal procedure, hindi na siya least guilty. Kasi maximum penalty din siya. Yun lang ang point ko. Baka lang ho, kailangan lang natin silipin yun, Mr. Speaker.
You have a point, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, doon sa punto na maaaring hindi na mag-avail, siguro, no? At the committee just made sure that the immunity from prosecution is available to any of the suspects who wish to spill out any information relative to the source or maybe to the drug lord na rin, na kung saan siyang nagbibigay o nagsusupply sa kanila. Siguro, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, again, to make it a little bit clearer, at the appropriate time, I would entertain the proposed amendments by the distinguished gentleman from Quezon City.
Thank you for that, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Hindi pa to a proper time, pero it just came to my mind. Nakita ko yung front page ng Inquirer today. Hindi ko nabasa yung eksaktong wordings, pero ang pagkaintindi ko, ang sinasabi ngayon sa trial ni Senator Laila de Lima, ang sinasabi ng testigo ay wala naman silang nakitang direct connection between, at least the testigo ngayon, walang direct connection between Senator Laila de Lima at saka yung proliferation at yung pagbenta ng drugs coming from the National Bilibid Prison. However, dahil doon sa mga nangyari, there was sufficient grounds under our present laws as existing ngayon, keep an sitting senator of the land in detention, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. It is not exactly related now, pero naisip ko lang po na these are the dangers of the law as it stands now. Hindi kaya pag pinatigas pa natin, hindi kaya baka lalo pa nating mag-create yung ganong situation. Remember, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, I do not recall who said this, but the whole point of our criminal justice system is to protect the innocent. It's just a side note, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, and maybe I don't require a comment from the honorable sponsor on this matter. If I may just move on.
But let me just comment just the same, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, that yes, I perfectly agree that the justice system must serve the oppressed. I'm not very privy about the case that Senator De Lima is facing right now as to what evidence, what charges were filed against her. But if only to improve our laws with respect to that kind of a scenario, again, this representation would be more than willing to entertain any proposal from the distinguished gentleman from Quezon City as far as that subject matter is concerned.
Thank you for that, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. may aside dito si Congressman Caloy, pero hindi ko na po babanggitin ngayon, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Mukhang may balak ang makabayan na mag-introduce ng substitute bill, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
We will consider whatever proposal is available.
May I move on to my second topic, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor? If the sponsor and the chair will allow me, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Let's talk about physical manifestations. Physical manifestations. On Section 12, amending Section 15, the bill expounds on the penalties for dangerous drugs use. A person is apprehended either through treatment or through imprisonment, but only when he or she is found to be positive after a confirmatory test. Is that correct? Section 12, amending Section 15. Ang sinasabi po nito, kukunin ka, the intention of this is to, yung user. Ang point is, bago ka hulihin, for treatment or para ikulong ka, kailangan may confirmatory test. More or less, yun yung ibig sabihin nun. Tapos, ang sinasabi niya, yung mga napatunayan ng test na drug dependent, 6 months na treatment. At pag hindi ka drug dependent, 6 years imprisonment. Pag hindi ka drug dependent. Tama po ba yun? Is that correct sa understanding ko of Section 12 amending Section 15, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, you are correct. You are correct, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. So, doon po muna ako doon sa part ng provision na to na pinag-uusapan po natin yung physical manifestations. Ang sinasabi kasi, para ka ma-confirmatory test, para ma-test kung may drugs ka sa katawan mo, dalawang grounds ang pwede. Dalawa lang ang kailangan. May physical manifestation of drug use, ang tingin ng enforcement officer, gumagamit to. At saka pangalawa, ayaw mo magpa-test. Sabi niya, magpa-test ka, ayaw mo. Pwede ka na niyang kunin. Pwede ka na niyang i-apprehend para mag-require at i-require na i-test ka. Tama po ba yan? May third part dun na sinasabi, pero hindi ito requirement. Parang assume na. May possession ka ng paraphernalia. Nakita ka ng foil, nakitaan ka ng foil, nakitaan ka ng tutor o instrument o lighter, may presumption na dun. So it's, may gamit ka na pang shabu. Hindi pa yung possession, ha? Hindi pa yung actual drugs to. May gamit ka. Pero kahit wala yun, mukhang guilty ka. Mukha kang gumagamit. At ayaw mo magpa-test. Pwede ka nang kunin for test. Tama po ba yun? Tama ba yung pagkaintindi ko dito, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. In fact, dito sa section na ito, ay tama po kayo, no? Dalawa po yung points, no, na pwedeng makonsider that you are a user. Dito muna tayo sa user, no? One, kapag during apprehension, meron pong manifestation na ikaw ay gumagamit nung ikay nahuli. Maaring merong something sa iyong physical appearance, maaring sa mata mo, o maaring siguro sa mga galaw at kilos mo. No? Number two ay you refuse to submit yourself to a drug and confirmatory test. Ito po yung disputable presumption na pinopropose po natin. Dahil ang idea po natin dito is that if you refuse to have a test
Mukhang guilty.
as well as a confirmatory test, may tinatago po kayo.
Mukhang guilty ka.
Oh, mukhang guilty ka.
Mukhang guilty
Dahil
ka.
may tinatago ka, you are presumed to be a user. And, you know,
Mukhang guilty
in the
ka.
course of your defense, siguro sa korte, ang husgado na po ang bahala magsabi kung ikaw ay gumagamit o hindi.
Thank you for that, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Side note lang po. Inaasar po ako ng staff ko kagabi. Kasi napanood nila sa Facebook Live. Facebook Live pala tayo dito. Facebook Live po pala tayo dito. And during my previous interpolation nung kay Congresswoman Sara Ilago sa UP-DND Accord, daming trolls at bashers daw. At ang sabi ng mga trolls, yung congressman na yan, kasi lawlaw ang suot ko, mahaba buhok ko, may eye bags ako, gumaganyan ako, at saka ang likod ko dito sa podium, mukhang addict yan. Yun yung sinasabi nila. Yun yung sinasabi nila. Buti na lang pag tinanong ako, papadrug test ako, sabay tayo, wala akong problema. So makakalusot po ako dito. Pero my point is, ang daling sabihin ng physical manifestation. I recall also a certain situation, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, na ang pinaglalaban namin ay lupa, land issue. And of course, sanay na sanay yung mga pulis na magbabarikada yung community para malinis ang enforced na demolition nila. Bago nun, pumasok sila sa community at saka yung mga lahat ng mukhang user, mukhang tulak, may tattoo, may signs na EP, pwede nilang kunin muna for questioning. Wala pa tong batas na to, Wala pa tong batas na to. Pero dinala muna nila sa station for questioning. Malinaw sa lahat, issue ng lupa, pero in essence, lahat ng kalalakihan sa buong community na yon ay wala nung dumating ang demolition team. Kunikwento ko lang po, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, and this was before this law. Pero let's go to the UND, lagyan po natin ng medyo mas linaw yung physical manifestations, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. The UN Office of Drugs and Crimes identifies some physical effects of certain drugs. For example, LSD equates LSD, shabu, dilated pupils, nausea, vomiting, profuse sweating, rapid heart rate. Other effects may also include emotional instability and perceptual disturbances. Sa ecstasy naman, sabi din ng UN, high blood pressure and heart rate, nausea, restlessness, visual or auditory hallucinations. Minsan parang nakakita rin ako ng Supreme Court Justice na parang may kausap na Sorry. Would you agree that these physical manifestations are defined by the UNODC are enough to give rise to reasonable suspicions? Sabi na ng international studies, ito yung mga manifestation. Pwede na ba yan?
Well, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, yung po mga nabanggit po na mga manifestations ay hindi po gawain ng isang normal, sober, at isang taong walang impluensya ng kahit anumang chemical sa katawan, no? So, definitely, kapag lumabas po itong mga manifestations na ito, there is something that he probably took in or drank or probably injected or whatever. So, sa tingin natin ay hindi normal, dalawang bagay ho lang ho yun. Either gumamit ito ng illegal na droga o talaga may diferensya ito.
So we both agree na the law enforcement officer can use any of these signs according to the law and by the sponsor's own words. A law enforcement officer can use any of these signs.
That is correct, Mr.
That is
Speaker,
correct.
distinguished colleague.
To
However,
implement Section 15.
meron pong kolatilya. Kailangan apprehended siya. Hinuli ho siya. Kailangan may apprehension eh. Kasi,
Hindi po. Ang apprehension ay nasa situation na clarify nyo for me, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Ibig sabihin, halimbawa ngayon, dahil sa interpolation natin, pawis-pawis ako. Tsaka kanina pa ako sinisita ng rules kasi lakad ako ng lakad dito. Hindi ako pwedeng arestuhin o hindi ako pwedeng suspicious ka eh. Hindi po ganun yun. Tama po ba?
tama po. Hindi po kayo basta-basta pwedeng arestuhin ng kahit sinong law enforcer. If you are apprehended for a cause, for instance, ikaw ay nakitang nagtutulak, o ikaw kaya ay nakitang humihit-hit ng illegal na marijuana. So that's the time that they will subject you to a test and a confirmatory test.
Or nasa paligid ka ng may gumagamit.
Or nasa palibot ka.
Nasa area ka ng may gumagamit.
Within the premises.
Within the premises.
That's correct.
Yung sa mga presumption and circumstances. Nasa area ka na merong nakitaan ng drugs doon, pwede ka na.
Basta within a
Premises. The
Premises, yes.
I understand the clarification, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. So malinaw na malinaw, the sponsor is saying na hindi ito anytime.
Yes.
Hindi ito anytime. Para clear lang po.
That is correct.
Thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Medyo siguro nabobo ako doon sa pagbasa na ang interpretation ko, anytime basta may physical manifestation at matigas ang ulo ko, ayaw ko magpa-test, yari na ako. Hindi po ganon.
Hindi po ganon.
Nito, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
You're correct, Mr. Speaker. Doon naman po sa possession of instrument or apparatus, yung disputable presumption pa rin ho doon ay yung the same presumption that was used in the rules of court that states possession of a stolen good, yung fencing. Diba? Kapag nasa iho nahuli yung nakaw na sasakyan, kunyari, you can be charged for
Parang fencing, no?
this is the same presumption that we are using doon naman ho sa apparatus.
Understood, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Hindi po ako masyadong, kasi simple lang naman ang ibig sabihin ng mala prohibitum nga eh. Mukhang guilty talaga. Sorry. Obvious ba? Rather, hindi mukhang guilty. Iba pala yun. Obvious ba? Obvious ba? Bakit kami tutor dyan? May presumption. At kailangan mong ilaban. Yun yung point ng mga mala prohibitum nga naman. Tama kayo, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Obvious ba? Yun naman yung point nun. Pero, nag-worry lang po ako dito sa physical manifestations, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Kasi like I said, ngayon lang na the distinguished sponsor ang ini-interpolate ko, pinagpapawisan ako ng malamig ngayon. At saka, edgy ako sa dami ng kapeng ininom ko. What I'm saying is, these physical manifestations, even as defined by the UN, can apply actually to other circumstances. And doctors themselves and doctors engaged in the practice of the dangerous drugs prevention and cure themselves have seen addicts who don't exhibit any of these signs actually, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
Yes,
So-
you're correct, Mr. Speaker. In fact, I personally experienced the same. No, I have friends who are users, but does not manifest any of these manifestations as defined and stated under the United Nations ODC. So, hindi conclusive, no, na kapag mayroong ganitong manifestation, although it gives a sign, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, na you have probably used illegal drugs or consumed illegal drugs if these manifestations are present. But again, the colatilla is dapat meron pong apprehension. Nahuli ho po. Nahuli.
Area. Thank you for that, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Kasi nakakatakot nga kung hindi malinaw na sa period ng apprehension. Kasi kung hindi, lahat pwede nang hulihin. Tapos, ang law enforcement officers natin ay pampadagdag ng score, madaming huhulihing small time. Imbis na nakatutok sa big time, users lang dito, ayos na sila. Kompleto na sila sa quota nila, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. I note, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, that my time for interpellation is almost up. And, sensya na po, di pa tayo pumupunta doon sa mga magandang topic, yung esensya ng... and if the rules that the majority will allow this representation and the honorable sponsor and the speaker, if I may be allowed to just continue my interpellation on a later date so that I could give way to other equally important interpellations or matters to be taken up by the plenary, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, anytime you wish to ask questions with respect to this proposed bill, this representation would be more than willing to entertain them. Again, let me just state that if there are proposals that the good gentleman from Quezon City has in his mind, perhaps he can help the committee in drafting a amendment when the appropriate time comes, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, since the sponsor is amenable to a second round to be given to the Honorable Belmonte, we have no objection on the part of the majority. Mr. Speaker, next to interpellate is the Honorable Sergio Dagook of APEC Party List.
Honorable Celso Dagog is hereby recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the distinguished seasoned representative of my kababayan, the 2nd District of Surigao del Norte, yield to only 2 clarificatory questions.
Gladly, Mr. Speaker, coming from my fellow kababayan, this representation would be more than willing to reply to his questions.
Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor, during the interpellation of my deputy minority leader, I was reminded during one of the committee hearing on the statistics and reports of the PNP in as far as the rate of conviction is concerned. So, when I listened to the details of the provisions being amended under the existing RA 9165, I did not hear that it includes some measures to resolve the issue on the rate conviction and the matter about collusion of law enforcement agents, law enforcers, in as far as the enforcement of the law is concerned. So, the first question, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor, kasama po ba sa amendment that will provide penalty or to law enforcers if they are found out to have colluded to the accused, no? If there are collusions that will be found out between the accused and the law enforcers, may penalty po ba yung law enforcer, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor?
Thank you, distinguished gentleman, my fellow kababayan, who is one of the best representative from that northeastern part of Mindanao, the island of Siargao. Yes, you are correct, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, na kasama po sa proposal natin in this amendment, the inclusion of police or law enforcers, including also yung mga prosecutors, including the judges, if they are found to be bungling yung cases. For those naman officers who try to protect or cuddle any suspect for that matter, aiding in the escape or preventing the arrest, yan po ay he will be charged for being a cuddler and protector. And under this proposal, they will be penalized. Life imprisonment to death, the maximum penalty pa rin. So, lahat po ng butas na maaaring matakpan doon sa fight against drugs, no, in terms of apprehension up to the time that we convict the suspect, including the drug lords, including the cuddlers and protectors, ay sinama po natin dito. Because you are correct also that as far as the convictions are concerned ng mga drug suspects, marami ho ang na-reverse ng Court of Appeals. Marami din naman po na na-dismiss sa ating mga lower courts. Meron naman siguro silang legal na basihan because apparently, the reasons why cases were dismissed are insufficiency of evidence, inconsistencies in testimonies, non-coordination with PIDEA because the law is very clear. No? Kapag merong drug operation, the lead agency will be PIDEA. And if the PNP attempts to raid a house without the coordination with the PIDEA, then that could be a good ground for a dismissal. So, ito po yung gusto nating i-address, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague.
So I am glad to hear that, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor, because I really wrote a note on my reference during that committee hearing, the concern about law enforcers and the rate of conviction. The last point that I am going to raise, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor, is already partly answered by the distinguished sponsor. I would just like to clarify, what really, how it is phrased or how it is worded, in as far as the roles of engagement problem is concerned. Yung sinabi mo partly kanina na supposed to be PDEA, because it appears in the hearing na nagkakaroon ng negative result yung operation because of some informations being leaked out. Kasi napakahaba pa nung dadaanan ng mga information. So, that is the concern, one of the concern that I have noticed during that hearing. If indeed that was again addressed in the amendment, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, kinonsider po natin yan dito sa ating proposed amendments. Although the operational, what do you call that? Operational sequence or whatever
Rules
it
of
is,
engagement, ano ba yan?
ito ho ang PIDEA na po ang I share the concern, Mr. Speaker, of my good friend and gentleman from Siargao that meron talagang malaking problema doon sa coordination. In fact, some of the tips or leaks of operations come from law enforcement mismo. Kaya nga ho, sinasama natin dito, yung kanilang penalty ay mabigat din. Can I ask for a 30-second suspension, Mr. Speaker? No, yung Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleague, sorry it took me a while. Nasa Section 92 po ng ating Republic Act 9165, yung delay and bungling sa prosecution ng mga drug cases. This involves yung ating mga piskal, yung ating mga huwes o yung mga judges. Sa law enforcers naman, ay nandito tayo sa Section 29, which means we covered practically all the bases that we can imagine in order to plug the loopholes at nang sa ganon ay hindi na po mangyari ito. Doon sa operational details na lang, perhaps what we can do is ask PIDEA and PNP to really plug the possible loopholes in their operations so as not to miss out on the suspects that they want to apprehend. So, meron din po, on Section 29, meron din criminal liability yung mga law enforcers. Kadalasan po ng kaso ay ang depensa ho lagi ng akusado ay planting of evidence. So, in the law, it is stated that if found to be guilty of planting evidence, you will still suffer the penalty of maximum penalty. If this is death, then death is what will be imposed on the enforcers na nagplanting. Sa ating proposal, the same section, dinagdagan po natin ng paragraph. Sinabi po natin doon, a defense of planting evidence interposed and pleaded by any person charged for violation of any of the unlawful acts prescribed in this act presumed to be a complaint against the law enforcers or private individuals involved in the arrest, search, and seizure. So very clear na as far as we can imagine, matakpan ho natin yung mga loopholes na yan. Nang sa ganun ay maging matibay yung ating batas laban sa illegal drugs.
So again, Mr. Speaker, ang dinagdag natin yung presumption.
That is correct. This is to support and ensure that complaints, charges will be filed against the top-level members of a drug syndicate. Kasi nga po, kadalasan ang ating nahuhuli ay yung pong mga nagbebenta lang ho sa street o yung tinatawag nating street peddlers na pusher. So, but this time, we will run after, if we pass this law, then it will help the prosecution, it will help our Department of Justice, it will help PIDEA and PNP to run after. Even yung pong mga narco generals na sinasabi, they can already be charged for cuddling or protecting because meron na po tayong ilagay na legal presumption dito sa batas na ito.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This representation is really satisfied with the clarifications of the distinguished sponsor. So, I hope that will become into law, the proposed measure. Thank you, distinguished sponsor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 7814.
Is there any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
I move to suspend session, Mr. Speaker.
Session suspended.
I just read of this bill.
Session resumed. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we consider House Bill number 8664 as contained in Committee Report number 745. Mr. Speaker, I move that we open the period of sponsorship and debate for House Bill number 8664.
Is there an objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the sponsor of the bill, the Honorable Jose Enrique Garcia, for his sponsorship speech.
Honorable Jose Enrique Garcia is hereby recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my honor to sponsor a bill that will greatly benefit the province of Bataan. This is House Bill number 8664 on Committee Report number 745, entitled An Act Providing for the Reapportionment of the Province of Bataan into 3 legislative districts. May I move, Mr. Speaker, that my explanatory note be adopted as my sponsorship message. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, we join the sponsor and we move that the the explanatory note be adopted as the sponsorship speech of the sponsor.
Is there any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, there being no member who wishes to interpolate, I move that we close the period of sponsorship and debate.
Is there any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we open the period of amendments.
Is there an objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, there being no committee and individual amendments, I move that we close the period of amendments.
Is there an objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we consider for approval on second reading House Bill number 8664.
Is there an objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Those in favor of House Bill 86604 say aye.
Aye.
Those who are against say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 8604 is hereby approved on second reading. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we consider House Bill number 7808 under Committee Report number 548. So move, Mr. Speaker, and I request that the Secretary General be directed to read the title of the measure.
Is there any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. The Secretary General is hereby directed to read House Bill 7808.
House Bill number 7808, an act amending sections 35, 37, 38, 39, and 40 of Republic Act number 4566, otherwise known as the Contractor's License Law, modifying the contractor's license renewal process, increasing fees and imposing penalties for violations thereof.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the parliamentary status is that we are in the period of sponsorship and debate on this bill. And to sponsor the bill, I move that we recognize the Honorable Aurelio Dong Gonzalez for his sponsorship speech. The Honorable Dong.
Honorable Aurelio
Dong
Dong Gonzalez is hereby recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. So I'm here to sponsor the amendment of Section 3039 and the Republic Act number 4566, otherwise known as Contractors License Law. So, Mr. Speaker, kailangan na kailangan po ito, dumaan yung 1 year, they have to renew again. So I think it's better talaga na ma-amend natin po yung 4566. So that's all, Mr. Speaker. Thank you po.
Mr. Speaker, there being no members who wish to interpolate on the subject matter, I move that we close the period of sponsorship and debate. So
Is there any
moved.
objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we open the period of amendments.
Is there any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Speaker, there being no individual amendments, neither committee amendments, I move that we close the period of amendments.
Is there any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 7808, the committee report number 548. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Those who are in favor of House Bill 7808 say aye.
Aye.
Those who are against say nay. House Bill 7808 is hereby approved on second reading. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, the Honorable Gonzalez. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with our rules governing increase in aid of legislation, I move that we refer the following House resolutions to the appropriate committees. House Resolution number 1509 to the Public Order and Safety Committee, 1514 to the Appropriations and Public Accounts Committee, 1515 to the Agriculture and Food and Trade Industry, 1516 to the Housing and Urban Development Committee, 1517 to the Committee on Health, 1518 to the Committee on Transportation, 1519 to the Committee on Basic Education and Culture, 1523 to the Committee on Basic Education and Culture, 1525 to the Committee on Health, 1526 to the Committee on Agriculture and Food and Trade and Industry, 1527 to the Committee on Energy, 1528 to the Committee on Natural Resources, 1535 to the Committee on Trade and Industry, 1537 to the Committee on Labor and Employment and Transportation. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there an objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to our rules governing increase in aid of legislation, I move that we refer the following speeches to the appropriate committees. The speech of the Honorable Sangkopan on February 1st of 2021 to the Committee on Muslim Affairs. The speech of the Honorable Atienza on February 1st, 2021 to the Committee on Basic Education and Culture. The speech of the Honorable Sarmiento on February 1st, 2021 to the Committee on Public Order and Safety. The speech of the Honorable Franz Castro on February 1st, 2021 to the Committee on Veterans Affairs. The speech of the Honorable Sarate on February 1st, 2021 to the Committee on Agriculture and Food and Trade and Industry. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there an objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the change of referral of the following measures. House Bill number 1357 and 2264 from the Committee on Women and Gender Equality to the Committee on Population and Family Relations. House Bill number 8428 from the Special Committee on Creative Industry and Performing Arts to the Committee on Local Government. House Resolution number 1152 from the Committee on Labor and Employment to the Committee on Overseas Workers Affairs. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we include additional co-authors on House Bill numbers 8631, 8632, 8606, House Resolutions number 734, and resolutions of both Houses number 2 as contained in the list to be submitted by the Committee on Rules. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we consider for third and final reading House Bill number 8551, and may I request the Secretary General to read the title of the bill and the roll of members for nominal voting.
Is there any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. The Secretary General is hereby ordered to read and conduct nominal voting for House Bill 8551.
House Bill number 8551, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Trans-Pacific Broadband Group International Incorporated under Republic Act number 8657 to construct, establish, install, maintain, and operate communication systems for the reception and transmission of messages within the Philippines. Roll call of members in consideration of House Bill number 8551. Abante, Abaya, Abellanosa, Abu, Abueg Saldivar, Abunda, Acop, Acosta, Acosta Alba, Adyong, Advincula, Agabas, Agaraw, Aglipay, Aguinaldo, Albano, Almario, Alonte, Alvarez Franz, Alvarez Genaro, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amante Matba, Amatong, Angara, Aragones, Arbison, Arenas, Arroyo, Atienza, Omentado, Babasa, Bagatsing, Balindong, Banyas Nograles, Barba, Barbers, Baronda, Barzaga, Baskug, Bautista, Bautista Bandigan, Belmonte, Benitez, Bernos, Biazon, Billones, Biron, Bolilia, Bondok, Bordado, Bravo, Brosas, Bulut, Bustos, Kabatbat, Cabochan, Cabredo, Cagas, Calderon, Calixto, Caminero, Campos, Canama, Kawagdan, Cardema, Cari, Castelo, Castro Franz, Castro Fredenil, Cayetano Alan Peter, Cayetano Mariela Arni, Celeste, Chato, Chipeco, Chungalao, Co Angelica, Co Elizaldi, Co Juanco, Coliantes, Risologo, Cua, Quaresma, Cueva, Culyamat, Dagook, Dalipe, Dalog, Daza, De Jesus, De Venecia, Defensor Lawrence, Defensor Michael, De Los Santos, De Loso Montalia, Dimaporo, Abdullah, Dimaporo Khalid, Duavit, Duhali, Duterte, D. Faustino Ino, D. Faustino Michael, D. Ian, Ebcas, Ecleo, Elago, Enverga, Erice, Erigel, Ermita Buhain, Escudero, Espina, Espino, Estrella, Fariñas Rudy Cesar, Fariñas Ria, Fernandez, Fernando, Ferrer Juliet, Ferrer Luis, Flores, Fortun, Fortuno, Frasco, Fuentebella, Gaite, Garbin, Garcia Jose Enrique, Garcia Pablo Jan, Garcia Vincent, Garin Janet, Garin Sharon, Gasataya, Gatchalian, Gato, Heron, Go Mark, and Gonzaga, Gonzales Aurelio, Gonzales Neptali, Sandro, Gonzales Sandro, Goriseta, Gico, Gulyas, Guya, Haresco, Hataman, Hernandez, Herrera D, Hofer, Haloshos, Javier, Jimenez, Co Eliza, Co Wilton, Konghun, Labad-Labad, Lacson, Lacson Noel, Lagman, Lagon, Lara, Lazatin, Liachon, Legarda, Lim Kaichong, Lopez, Loyola, Losotan, Macapagal Arroyo, Maceda, Madrona, Malapitan, Mangawang, Mangudadatu, Marcoleta, Mariano Hernandez, Marino, Marquez, Martinez, Matba, Matugas, Mendoza, Mercado, Momo, Natividad Naganyo, Nava, Nieto, Noel, Nograles Jericho, Nograles Juan Fidel, Nolasco, Nunez Malanaon, Uwaminal, Olivares, Ong Jose, Ong Ronnie, Ordanes, Ortega, Uano Dizon, Pacquiao Alberto, Pacquiao Rogelio, Padiernos, Paduano, Palma, Pancho, Panotes, Peña, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Plaza, Puno, Kimbo, Radaza, Ramirez Sato, Remulla, Revilla, Reyes, Rivera, Robes, Rodriguez, Roman, Romero, Romualdez Ferdinand, Romualdez Yeda, Romualdo, Romulo, Roque, Sakdalan, Sagarbaria, Sakaluran, Salceda, Salimbangon, Salo, Sanchez, Sangkopan, Santos Recto, Sarmiento, Saulug, Savellano, Xiao, Silverio, Singson, Singson Mihan, Sinsuwat, Swansing Estrelita, Swansing Horacio, Suarez Aleta, Suarez David, Suntay, Si Alvarado, Taduran, Talyado, Tambunting, Tan Alaysa, Tan Angelina, Tan Samir, Tan Shari, Tan Shirney, Tejada, Teves Arnolfo, Teves Jose, Tiangco, Tolentino, Torres Gomez, Tulfo, Tupas, Tutor, T. Alan, T. Diego, Umali Alfonso, Umali Maria Victoria, Unabia, Ungab, Uy Juliet, Uy Rolando, Valeriano, Valmayor, Vargas, Vargas Alfonso, Velasco, Veloso, Vergara, Villa, Villafuerte, Villanueva Eduardo, Villanueva Noel, Villar, Villaraza Suarez, Villarica, Villago, Yap Eric, Yap Victor, Yu, Zamora Ronaldo, Zamora Waikurat, Zarate Zubiri. Second call in consideration of House Bill Number 8551 on third reading. Abante, Abaya, Abellanosa, Acosta, Acosta Alba, Adyong, Agaraw, Aguinaldo, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amatong, Aragones, Arenas, Aumentado, Bagatsing, Barzaga, Bernos, Biron, Bulot, Kabatbat, Kanama, Cardema, Kari, Coangco, Kisrologo, Dalipe, De Jesus, De Venecia, Defensor Michael, Duavit, Di Faustino Ino, Ebcas, Erice, Ermita Buhain, Fariñas, Rudy Cesar, Fernandez, Fernando, Flores, Fortun, Garbin, Garin Sharon, Gatchalian, Guya, Haloshos, Co. Wilton, Conghun, Liachon, Lopez, Macapagal Arroyo, Mangawang, Magudadatu, Marcoleta, Marino, Matba, Mercado, Nograles 1, Nolasco, Nunez Malanyaon, Uwaminal, Ordanes, Panotes, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Roman, Romero, Sagarbaria, Salceda, Santos Recto, Saulug, Singson, Suarez Aleta, Suarez David, C. Alvarado, Taduran, Talyado, Tan Angelina, Tan Shirney, Tejada, Torres Gomez, T. Alan, Unabia, Uy Juliet, Veloso, Villa, Villanueva Noel, Villar, Villaraza Suarez, Villarica, Yap Victor, Zubiri.
With 2,007 members voting in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, 0 abstention, House Bill 8551 is hereby approved on third reading. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, for local bills, establishment of peaceport, I move that we consider on third and final reading House Bill 8550, and thereafter may request the Secretary General be directed to read the title of the bill, and thereafter to call the roll for nominal voting.
Is there any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. The Secretary General is hereby directed to read and conduct nominal voting, House Bill 8550.
House Bill 8550, an act establishing a fish port and fish processing facilities in the city of Oroquieta, province of Misamis Occidental, and appropriating funds therefore. Roll call of members in consideration of House Bill number 8550. Abante, Abaya, Abellanosa, Abu, Abueg, Saldivar, Abunda, Acop, Acosta Alba, Adyong, Advincula, Agabas, Agarao, Aglipay, Aguinaldo, Albano, Almario, Alonte, Alvarez, France, Alvarez Genaro, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amante Matba, Amatong, Angara, Aragones, Arbison, Arenas, Arroyo, Atienza, Aumentado, Babasa, Bagatsing, Balindong, Banyas Nograles, Barba, Barbers, Baronda, Barzaga, Bascug, Bautista, Bandigan, Belmonte, Benitez, Bernos, Biazon, Billones, Biron, Bolilia, Bondoc, Bordado, Bravo, Brosas, Bulot, Bustos, Kabatbat, Kabochan, Cabredo, Cagas, Calderon, Calixto, Caminero, Campos, Canama, Coagdan, Cardema, Cari, Castelo, Castro France, Castro Frednil, Cayetano, Alan Peter, Cayetano Maria, Larni, Celeste, Chato, Chipeco, Chungalao, Co Angelica, Co Elzalde, Coanco, Colliantes, Crisologo, Cuba, Quaresma, Cueva, Juliamat, Dago, Dalipe, Dalog, Daza, De Jesus, De Venecia, Defensor Lawrence, Defensor Michael, De Los Santos, De Loso, Montalia, Dimaporo Abdullah, Dimaporo Khalid, Duavit, Duhali, Duterte, Di Faustino Ino, Di Faustino Michael, Di Ian, Ebcas, Ecleo, Elago, Enverga, Erice, Erigel, Ermina Buhain, Escudero, Espina, Espino, Estrella, Fariñas Ria, Fariñas Rudy Cesar, Fernandez Fernando, Ferrer Juliet, Ferrer Luis, Flores, Fortuno, Carrasco, Fuentebella, Gaite, Garbin, Garcia, Jose Enrique, Garcia Pablo, John, Garcia Vincent, Garin Jeanette, Garin Sharon, Gasataya, Gatchalian, Gato, Heroin, Goed, Gomark, Gonzaga, Gonzalez Aurelio, Gonzalez Neftali, Gonzalez Sandro, Gorisita, Guico, Gullias, Guya, Heresco, Hataman, Hernandez, Herrera D, Hofer, Halosos, Javier Jimenez, Ko Elisa, Ko Wilton, Kong Hun, Labad, Lacson Noel, Lagman, Lagon, Lara, Lazatin, Liachon, Legarda, Lim, Kay Chong, Lopez, Luzola, Lusotan, Bacapagal Arroyo, Maceda, Madrona, Malapitan, mga Ngawong, Mangungudato, Marcoleta, Maria Hernandez, Marino, Marquez, Martinez, Matba, Matugas, Mendoza, Mercado, Momo, Natividad, Nagaño, Narva, Nieto, Noel, Nograles Jericho, Nograles Juan, Nolasco, Nunez, Palañao, Uaminal, Olivares, Ong Jose, Ong Ronnie, Ordanes, Ortega, Owano, Dizon, Pacquiao, Alberto, Pacquiao, Rogelio, Padiernos, Paduano, Palma, Pancho, Panotes, Peña, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Plaza, Puno, Kimbo, Radaza, Ramirez Sato, Remulla, Revilla, Reyes, Rivera, Robes, Rodriguez, Roman, Romero, Romualdez Ferdinand, Romualdez Sieda, Romualdo, Romulo, Roque, Sakdalan, Sagabaria, Sakaluran, Salceda, Salimbangon, Salo, Sanchez, Sancopan, Santos Recto, Sarmiento, Saulog, Sabeliano, Xiao, Silverio, Singson, Mihan, Sinsuat, Sing, Estrelita, Sing, Horacio, Suarez, Aleta, Suarez, David, Suntay, C. Alvarado, Taduran, Talyado, Tambunting, Tan Alaisa, Tan Angelina, Tan Samir, Tan Sherry, Tan Sherny, Tejada, Teves Arnolfo, Teves Jose, Tianco, Tolentino, Torres Gomez, Tulfo, Tupas, Tutor, T. Alan, T. Diego, Marley Alfonso, Marley Mario Victoria, Unabia, Unga, Uy Juliet, Uy Rolando, Valeriano, Valmayor, Vargas, Alfonso, Velasco, Veloso, Vergara, Villa, Villafuerte, Villanueva, Eduardo, Villanueva, Noel, Villar, Villaraza Suarez, Villarica, Yalago, Yap, Eric, Yap, Victor, Yu, Zamora, Ronaldo, Zamora, Waikurat, Zarate, Zubiri. Second call for House Bill 8550. Abante, Abaya, Abeliano, Acosta Alba, Ajong, Agarao, Aguinaldo, Alaveres, Pantaleon, Amatong, Aragones, Arenas, Aumentado, Bagatsing, Barzaga, Bernos, Biron, Bulot, Kabatbat, Kanama, Cardena, Kari, Coanco, Crisologo, Dalipe, De Jesus, De Venecia, Defensor, Michael, Duavit, D. Faustino Ino, Ebcas, Erisa, Ermita Buhain, Fariñas, Rudy Cesar, Fernandez, Fernando, Flores, Fortun, Garbin, Garin, Sharon, Gatchalian, Guya, Halosos, Co. Wilton, Konghun, Liachon, Lopez, Macapagal Arroyo, Mangaong, Mangundadatu, Marcoleta, Marino, Matba, Mercado, Nograles Juan, Nolasco, Nunez Malañao, Nuaminal, Wardanes, Panotes, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Romero, Sagabaria, Salceda, Santos Recto, Saulog, Singson, Suarez Aleta, Suarez David, C. Alvarado, Taduran, Tadyado, Tan Angelina, Tan Sherny, Tejada, Torres Gomez, T. Alan, Unabia, Uy Juliet, Veloso, Villa, Villanueva Noel, Villar, Villaraza, Suarez, Villarica, Yap, Victor, Zubiri.
With 208 members voting in the affirmative, 0 in negative, 0 abstention, House Bill number 8550 is hereby approved on third reading. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, all our local bills for separation and renaming of barangays. Mr. Speaker, I move for the consideration on third reading House Bill 6535, 8560, 8561. For this purpose, may I request the Secretary General be directed to read the title of the bill and thereafter to call for nominal voting.
Is there any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. The Secretary General is hereby directed to read and conduct for nominal voting House Bill 6535, House Bill 8560, House Bill 8561.
House Bill number 6535, Anak renaming Barangay Santa Maria in the Municipality of Presentacion, Province of Camarines Sur as Barangay Parubcan. House Bill Number 8560, an act separating the sitios of Kaingian, Butak, Koskosnong, Longboy, Bangkag, and Butige from Barangay Manatong in the Municipality of Suyo, Province of Ilocos Sur, and constituting it into a distinct and independent barangay to be known as Barangay Butak. House Bill Number 8561, an act separating the sitios of Kimbuaya, Longboy, Bulala, Kinapian, Indadangan, Kumanibe, and Makaag from Barangay Suyo proper in the Municipality of Suyo, Province of Ilocos Sur, and constituting it into a distinct and independent barangay to be known as Barangay Kinapian. Roll call of members in consideration of House Bill Numbers 6535, 8560, and 8561. On third reading, Abante, Abaya, Abellanosa, Abu, Abueg, Saldivar, Abunda, Acop, Acosta, Acosta Alba, Adyong, Advincula, Agabas, Agaraw, Aglipay, Aguinaldo, Albano, Almario, Alonte, Alvarez Franz, Alvarez Genaro, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amante Matba, Amatong, Angara, Aragones, Arbison, Arenas, Arroyo, Atienza, Omentado, Babasa, Bagatsing, Balindong, Banyas Nograles, Barba, Barbers, Baronda, Barzaga, Baskug, Bautista, Bautista Bandigan, Belmonte, Benitez, Bernos, Biazon, Billones, Biron, Bolilia, Bondok, Bordado, Bravo, Brosas, Bulot, Bustos, Kabatbat, Kabutyan, Cabredo, Cagas, Calderon, Calixto, Caminero, Campos, Canama, Kawagdan, Cardema, Cari, Castelo, Castro Franz, Castro Fredenil, Cayetano Alan Peter, Cayetano Mariela Arni, Celeste, Chato, Chipeco, Chungalao, Co Angelica, Co Elizaldi, Coanco, Coliantes, Crisologo, Cuwa, Quaresma, Cueva, Culyamat, Dagook, Dalipe, Dalog, Daza, De Jesus, De Venecia, Defensor Lawrence, Defensor Michael de los Santos, De Loso Montalia, Dimaporo Abdullah, Dimaporo Khalid, Duavit, Duhali, Duterte, Di Faustino Ino, Di Faustino Michael, Di Ian, Ebcas, Ecleo, Elago, Enverga, Erice, Erigel, Ermita Buhain, Escudero, Espina, Espino, Estrella, Fariñas Ria, Fariñas Rudy Cesar, Fernandez, Fernando, Ferrer Juliet, Ferrer Luis, Flores, Fortun, Fortuno, Frasco, Fuentebella, Gaite, Garbin, Garcia Jose Enrique, Garcia Pablo Jan, Garcia Vincent, Garin Janet, Garin Sharon, Gasataya, Gatchalian, Gato, Heron, Go Ed, Go Mark, Gonzaga, Gonzales Aurelio, Gonzales Neptali, Gonzales Sandro, Goriseta, Gico, Gulias, Guya, Haresco, Hataman, Hernandez, Herrera D, Hofer, Halosos, Javier, Jimenez, Co Elisa, Co Wilton, Kunghun, Labad-Labad, Lacson, Noel, Lagman, Lagon, Lara, Lazatin, Liachon, Legarda, Lim Kaychong, Lopez, Loyola, Lusotan, Makapagal Arroyo, Maceda, Madrona, Malapitan, Mangawang, Mangudadatu, Marcoleta, Mariano Hernandez, Marino, Marquez, Martinez, Matba, Matugas, Mendoza, Mercado, Momo, Natividad Naganyo, Nava, Nieto, Noel, Nograles Jericho, Nograles Juan, Nolasco, Nunez Malaniaon, Uwaminal, Olivares, Ong Jose, Ong Ronnie, Ordanes, Ortega, Uwano Dizon, Pacquiao Alberto, Pacquiao Rogelio, Padiernos, Paduano, Palma, Pancho, Panotes, Peña, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Plaza, Puno, Kimbo, Radaza, Ramirez-Sato, Remulla, Revilla, Reyes, Rivera, Robes, Rodriguez, Roman, Romero, Romualdez Ferdinand, Romualdez Yeda, Romualdo, Romulo, Roque, Sakdalan, Sagarbaria, Sakaluran, Salceda, Salimbangon, Salo, Sanchez, Sangkopan, Santos Recto, Sarmiento, Saulug, Saveliano, Siao, Silverio, Singson Mihan, Sinsuwat, Swansing Estrelita, Swansing Horacio, Suarez Aleta, Suarez David, Suntay, C. Alvarado, Taduran, Talyado, Tambunting, Tan Alaysa, Tan Angelina, Tan Samir, Tan Shari, Tan Sherni, Tejada, Teves Arnolfo, Teves Jose, Tiangco, Tolentino, Torres Gomez, Tulfo, Tupas, Chotor, T. Alan, T. Diego, Umali Alfonso, Umali Maria Victoria, Unabia, Ungab, Uy Juliet, Uy Rolando, Valeriano, Valmayor, Vargas, Vargas Alfonso, Velasco, Veloso, Vergara, Villa, Villafuerte, Villanueva Eduardo, Villanueva Noel, Villar, Villaraza Suarez, Villarica, Violago, Yap Eric, Yap Victor, Yu, Zamora Ronaldo, Zamora Waikurat, Zarate Zubiri. Second call in consideration House Bill numbers 6535, 8560, 8561 on third reading. Abante, Abaya, Abellanosa, Acosta, Acosta Alba, Adyong, Agaraw, Aguinaldo, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amatong, Aragones, Arenas, Omentado, Bagatsing, Barsaga, Bernos, Biron, Bulot, Kabatbat, Kanama, Cardema, Cari, Cojuangco, Crisologo, Dalipe, De Jesus, De Venecia, Defensor Michael, Duavit, Di Faustino Ino, Erice, Ermita Buhain, Fariñas Rudy Cesar, Fernandez, Fernando, Flores, Fortun, Garbin, Garin Sharon, Gatchalian, Guya, Haloshos, Co Wilton, Konghun, Liachon, Lopez, Macapagal Arroyo, Mangawang, Mangudadatu, Marcoleta, Marinho, Matba, Mercado, Nograles Juan, Nolasco, Nunez Malaniaon, Uwaminal, Ordanes, Panotes, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Roman, Romero, Sagarbaria, Salceda, Santos Recto, Saulug, Singson, Suarez Saleta, Suarez David, C. Alvarado, Taduran, Talyado, Tan Angelina, Tan Sherney, Tejada, Torres Gomez, T. Alan, Onabia, Uy Juliet, Veloso, Villa, Villanueva Noel, Villar, Villaraza Suarez, Villarica, Yap Victor, Zubiri.
With 209 members voting in affirmative, 0 in negative, 0 abstention, House Bills number 6535, 8560, 8561 is hereby approved on third and final reading. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, for local bills for local legislative franchise, Mr. Speaker, I move that for consideration on third reading House Bill 8555. And for this purpose, may I request the Secretary General be directed to read the title of the bill and thereafter to call for nominal voting. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. The Secretary General is hereby directed to read House Bill 8555 and conduct nominal voting.
House Bill number 8555, an act granting Good News Sorsogon Foundation, Inc., a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations in the Bicol region. Roll call of members in consideration of House Bill 8555. Abante, Abaya, Abellanosa, Abu, Abueg, Saldivar, Abunda, Acop, Acosta, Acosta Alba, Adyong, Advincula, Agabas, Agaraw, Aglipay, Aguinaldo, Albano, Almario, Alonte, Alvarez France, Alvarez Senaro, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amante Matba, Amatong, Angara, Aragones, Arbison, Arenas, Arroyo, Atienza, Aumentado, Babasa, Gatsing, Balindong, Banyas Nograles, Barba, Barbers, Baronda, Barzaga, Bascug, Bautista, Bautista Bandingan, Del Monte, Benitez, Bernos, Biazon, Baliones, Biron, Bolilia, Bondoc, Bordado, Bravo, Brosas, Bulot, Bustos, Kabatbat, Kabuchan, Cabredo, Cagas, Calderon, Calixto, Caminero, Campos, Canama, Hogdan, Cardema, Cari, Castello, Castro Franz, Castro Fred Denel, Cayetano Alan Peter, Cayetano Maria Larni, Celeste, Chato, Chipeco, Chungalao, Co Angelica, Co Elizaldi, Coanco, Colyantes, Crisologo, Cua, Quaresma, Cueva, Juliamat, Dagook, Dalipe, Dalog, Daza, De Jesus, De Venecia, Defensor Lawrence, Defensor Michael De Los Santos, De Loso, Montalia, Dimaporo, Abdullah, Dimaporo, Kylie, Duavit, Duali, Duterte, Di Faustino, Ino, Di Faustino, Michael, Di Ian, Ebcas, Ecleo, Elago, Enverga, Erice, Rigel, Ermita Buhain, Escudero, Espina, Espino, Estrella, Fariñas, Ria, Fariñas, Rudy Cesar, Fernandez, Fernando, Ferrer, Juliet, Ferrer, Luis, Flores, Fortun, Fortuno, Frasco, Fuentebella, Gaite, Garbin, Garcia, Jose Enrique, Garcia, Pablo, John, Garcia, Vincent, Garin, Janet, Garin, Sharon, Gasataya, Gatchalian, Gato, Heron, Go Ed, Go Mark, Gonzaga, Gonzales Aurelio, Gonzales Neptali, Gonzales Sandro, Goriseta, Guico, Gullias, Guya, Haresco, Hataman, Hernandez, Herrera D, Hofer, Holosos, Javier, Jimenez, Co, Elisa, Co, Wilton, Kong Hun, Labad, Lacson Noel, Lagman, Lagon, Lara, Lazatin, Iachon, Legarda, Lim Kaichong, Lopez, Loyola, Lusotan, Mancapagal, Areo, Maceda, Madroana, Malapitan, Mangawang, Mangungudato, Marcoleta, Mariano, Hernandez, Marino, Marquez, Martinez, Matba, Matugas, Mendoza, Mercado, Momo, Matitibidad, Naganyon, Nava, Nieto, Noel, Nograles, Jericho, Nograles Juan, Nolasco, Nunez, Malañao, Waminal, Olivares, Ong Jose, Ong Ronnie, Ordanes, Ortega, Juano, Dizon, Pacquiao, Alberto, Pacquiao, Rogelio, Padiernos, Paduano, Palma, Pancho, Panotes, Peña, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Plaza, Puno, Kimbo, Radaza, Ramirez, Sato, Remulla, Revilla, Reyes, Rivera, Robes, Rodriguez, Roman, Romero, Romualdez, Ferdinand, Romualdez, Sieda, Romualdo, Romulo, Roque, Sakdalan, Sagavaria, Sacaluran, Salcedo, Salimbangon, Salo, Sanchez, Sancopan, Santos Rector, Sarmiento, Saulog, Savillano, Xiao, Silverio, Singson, Mihan, Sinsuat, Suasing, Estrelita, Swansing, Horacio, Suarez, Aleta, Suarez, David, Suntay, C. Alvarado, Taduran, Talyado, Tambunting, Tan Alaisa, Tan Angelina, Tan Samir, Tan Shiri, Tan Sherni, Tejada, Teves Arnolfo, Teves Jose, Tianco, Tolentino, Torres Gomez, Tulfo, Tupas, Tutor, T. Alan, T. Diego, Mali Alfonso, Mali Mario Victoria, Unabia, Ungab, Uy Juliet, Uy Rolando, Valeriano, Valmayor, Vargas Alfonso, Velasco Veloso, Vergara, Villafuerte, Villanueva Eduardo, Villanueva Noel, Villar, Villarasa Suarez, Villarica, Violago, Yap Eric, Yap Victor, Yu, Zamora Ronaldo, Zamora Waikurat, Zarate Zubiri. Second call for in consideration of House Bill 8555. Abante, Abaya, Abellanosa, Costa Alba, Adjong, Agrao, Aguinaldo, Alvarez, Pantaleon, Amatong, Aragones, Arenas, Aumentado, Bagatsing, Barsaga, Bernos, Biron, Bulot, Kabatbat, Kanama, Cardeba, Kari, Coangos, Crisologo, Dalipe, De Jesus, De Venecia, Defensor Michael, Duavit, D. Faustino Ino, Erice, Ermita Buhain, Farinas, Rudy Cesar, Fernandez, Fernando, Flores, Fortun, Garin, Sharon, Gatchalian, Guya, Halosos, Co. Wilton, Kong Hun, Liachon, Lopez, Macapagal Arroyo, Mangawang, Mangungudato, Marcoleta, Marino, Matba, Mercado, Nograles Juan, Nolasco, Nunez, Malañao, Nuaminal, Ordanes, Panotes, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Roman, Romero, Sagavaria, Salceda, Santos Recto, Saulog, Singson, Suarez Aleta, Suarez David, C. Alvarado, Taduran, Talyado, Tan Angelina, Tan Shirin, Tejada, Torres Gomez, T. Alan, Uy Juliet, Veloso, Villanueva Noel, Villar, Villarasa Suarez, Villarica, Yap Victor, Zubiri.
Members voting in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, 0 abstention. House Bill number 8555 is hereby approved on third and final reading. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we direct the Secretary General be immediately to transmit to the Senate House Bill approved on third final reading, including including those approved yesterday. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there an objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend.
Session suspended. Wala. Pusin na natin. Ay, consider. Session resumed. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we consider House Bill number 8631 under Committee Report number 736. May I request that the Secretary General be directed to read the title of the measure?
There any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Secretary General is directed to read House Bill 8631.
House Bill number 8631, an act granting Philippine citizenship to Bienvenido Morejon Marañon.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the parliamentary status is that we are in the period of sponsorship and debate. And with that, I move that we recognize the Honorable Yul Servo Nieto to sponsor House Bill number 8631. So move, Mr. Speaker.
There any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Representative Yul Servo of Manila is hereby recognized.
Mr. Speaker, nais ko lang po i-manifest na ang explanatory note po ng House Bill 8631 ay maging sponsorship speech po. Maraming salamat po.
Mr. Speaker, we join the author and move that the explanatory note be made as the sponsorship
There
speech.
any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, there being no members wish to interpolate on the matter, I move that we close the period of sponsorship and debate.
There any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we open the period of amendments.
There any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, there being no individual members who wish to propose amendments and there are no committee amendments, I move that we close the period of amendments.
There any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 8631 under Committee Report number 736. So move, Mr. Speaker.
There any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Those who are in favor of House Bill 8631 say aye.
Aye.
Those who are against say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 8631 is hereby approved on second reading. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we consider House Bill number 8606 under Committee Report number 733, and may I request that the Secretary General be directed to read the title of the measure?
There any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. The Secretary General is directed to read House Bill 8606.
House Bill 8606, an act establishing in the municipality of Bukawi, province of Bulacan, a general hospital to be known as the joining Villanueva General Hospital and appropriating funds therefore.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the parliamentary status is that we are in the period of sponsorship and debate. And to sponsor the bill, I move that we recognize the Deputy Speaker, Bernadette Herrera D. So move, Mr. Speaker.
There any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Deputy Speaker Bernadette Herrera is hereby recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Isang malaking karangalan po para sa akin na sponsor po ang bill na to. Alang-alang po sa isang matalik na kaibigan at matalik na kaibigan din po ng ating mahal na Speaker, Lord Alan Velasco, na si Mayor Joni Villanueva Tugna, na talagang napakalapit po sa atin pong lahat dito sa Kongreso. Nakasama natin ang kanyang asawa, nakasama natin ang kanyang kapatid, at siya mismo ay madalas nating nakasama at nakita natin ang dedikasyon at pagtulong niya sa kanyang bayan, kung gaano kalaki to lumago at kung gaano rin siya namimiss na ng mga taga-Bukawi. And it is just but a fitting tribute to name this hospital after her. Napakaliit na bagay po ito sa napakadami na nagawang kontribusyon ng batang mayorang ito na talagang isang malaking kawalan para sa bayan ng Bukawi. Isang kababayan at isang babaeng leader na tumugon sa pangangailangan ng maraming mamamayan sa bayan ng Bukawi. So, Mr. Speaker, bukod po dito, gusto ko rin pong isama ang explanatory note as part of our sponsorship speech. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We join the author, Mr. Speaker, and include the explanatory note as part of the sponsorship speech. So move, Mr. Speaker.
There any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, there being no members wish to interpolate on the subject matter, I move that we close the period of sponsorship and debate. So move, Mr. Speaker.
There any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we open the period of amendments.
There any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, there being no individual amendments and neither committee amendment, I move that we close the period of amendments.
there any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 8606 under Committee Report number 733. So move, Mr. Speaker.
There any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Those who are in favor of House Bill 8606 say aye.
Aye.
Those who are against say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 8606 is hereby approved on second reading.
Mr. Speaker, nakalimutan ko po pala idagdag, syempre kasama po natin dito si Deputy Speaker, ang kanyang ama, Brother Eddie Villanueva, kaya isa rin po ito sa mga bagay na nararapat lamang na bigyan natin ng tribute para sa kanyang anak. Maraming salamat po.
Noted. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we nominate and elect as member of the Committee on Social Services, the Honorable Ruth Mariano Hernandez, as member of the Committee on Legislative Franchises, the Honorable Emery Lollipop Juano Dizon, Vice, the Honorable Eric Martinez, the Honorable Johnny Pimentel as Vice Chairperson on the Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability, Vice, the Honorable Abraham Bambol Tolentino. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we adjourn session until February 15, Monday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Session suspended
Adjourn.
till
Adjourn.
session adjourned
Until
till
Monday.
Monday, February 15 at 3 o'clock. Thank you. Yes. Sige. Pwede na. Dapat 2 days, Thursday, Friday.
Okay, sir. Sir, palagay lang. Okay, sir. Atin na, sir.
Karaps, wala bang gold? Thursday, Friday, bakante. Thursday, Friday, bakante. Friday pa ako, Friday.